Great careers are not accidents, they're journeys built through clarity and intent. In every industry, there are such journeys that reveal true leadership, sacrifice, risk, and purpose. I'm Dirk, and this is The Pitch and the Catch, where we dive into choices, changes, and the careers they create. Welcome. Today, we're joined by someone who has shaped the commercial equipment industry for more than 2 decades. Daryn Walters is the former president of Exmark Manufacturing and also previously served as vice president at its parent, the Toro Company. There, he led large-scale operations across sales, marketing, engineering, customer service, finance, and manufacturing. After stepping away from executive life earlier this year, Daryn has been navigating something many leaders talk about, but few prepare for: the transition from running a major organization to rediscovering purpose, identity, and rhythm outside the corner office. Daryn brings a rare combination of operational excellence, strategic clarity, and deep people-centered leadership, plus the humility to talk openly about the shift from high-intensity executive work to a more intentional, balanced way of living. Daryn, thanks for joining me on the show. It's a special pleasure for me today. I'm so excited for our conversation.
I am too, Dirk. And I just have to tell you first off how appreciative I am for the invite. This means a lot to me. I've watched several of the podcasts of the past, and it's an honor. So thank you.
Thank you very much for this, Daryn. And just for the audience, you and I met a couple of months ago. We kind of hit it off. We're both musicians. We have a very good understanding in a lot of the topics that we've talked about, from culture to leadership. And so it just felt absolutely natural to have you on. And I'm looking forward to a great conversation with you.
That's great. Yes.
Daryn, you recently transitioned out of corporate life, as I mentioned, and we'll get to this later. This will be something we cover in depth. But before we do that, I'd really would love to start with not what you did in the last 6 months, but what you did in the last 30 years. Can you give us some insights on your journey as a professional and as a leader and the mark you left on the companies you've worked for?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. I have a very interesting career. It spans a lot of different subject areas, topics, company sizes, and so forth. So it's been a really fascinating career. I graduated from Florida State University and actually started my career in the banking industry in overnight investments. I was working for a very big bank, became Bank America out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And it was a really interesting job. I learned a lot very, very quickly. And you mature very quickly, as you can appreciate. When you get out of college, you probably have a slightly different perspective of your talent level than maybe others do at that point. You have to, it takes time to mature and grow into that. I realized very quickly, though, I did not want to be in the banking industry. There's nothing wrong with that. It wasn't a fit for me. So I felt I was drawn to more entrepreneurial type work. And so I started with some very small privately funded companies. And then I went on to co-found my own company called XML Solutions. There was 5 of us involved in that endeavor initially. And we grew it to about 170 people, international operations. And it was a fascinating journey. And from there, I stayed in the software space. One of the investors of XML Solutions, once we sold the company, offered to bring me over, and so it was a sister company, if you will, and it was a really interesting transition. And then my wife and I went through 9/11, and we were living in Washington D.C. I was boarding a plane on that fateful day, and it was one of those very impactful moments in our lives. And we decided, we had 3 small children, wanted to do something different. Raising them in that area just felt it was going to be tough for us as a family. So we rolled the dice and we moved out to Lincoln, Nebraska, and I joined the Toro Company.
Yeah.
And so it was a fascinating journey. It's, the first part of that question, the impact that you have on people and cultures in the company, I think that changed as well. It's really fascinating. Again, I'm much more reflective now at 58 years old, recently retired in April. And you think back to the years of your professional life and who you were when you started. the core of who you are, the values and the things that the principles you operate under, the work ethic, the intensity and the focus really didn't change much for me, but it was the maturity, I think really changed a lot over those years. I do
Mm.
have an anecdotal funny story though, when we were at XML Solutions and, and things work out the way they're supposed to, but we had an offer from Hewlett Packard to sell the company for $500 million, and this was back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and we chose not to do that. We said we want to take it to the public
Because you have
market.
ideals.
We were so smart. Remember, Dirk, really smart. So we turned the offer down. We ended up selling the company for roughly 35 million, paid back our investors, and called it good. But that journey itself, that experience was probably one of the most pivotal moments in my career. I mean, it was really tremendous learning experience. It would had a lot of very amazing things that happened during that time, and a lot of really tough things. So it was a great learning experience.
I can imagine. So I have a couple of thoughts. So there's this. I hope I don't misquote Mr. Pfeffer. So there's the Stanford business prof Jeffrey Pfeffer, and in one of his book, I remember he wrote that all the leaders that are talking about people, culture, and so on and so forth are really accomplished people, but they talk about it once they retired from the actual leading piece. And when he did his research in terms of how these people were actually behaving as leaders, they were as terrible as any other leader because it's the KPIs that have to be met by the year end.
Yes, right.
And that is throughput time, it is productivity, it is that cost. So all the nice leadership we hear is from people that actually can afford to say that because they don't have P&L anymore.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I really
And I
felt
think
like
you were different. So that from what I hear.
yeah, it is. It's interesting because, you think about those key performance indicators and you think about this insatiable need to continue to increase profitability and sales in most cases. I found that the only way to successfully do that was to really unleash the talent of the team.
Yes.
It became I used to joke toward, the end of my career, people would always ask me about my philosophy and things. There were a couple things that jumped out. I always said, jokingly would say that lawnmowers is a team sport. But they knew what that meant. Everybody had a hand in our success and our failure potentially. And then the other piece of that was really just be kind. That's to some that may feel soft. To me, that was absolutely the essence of who and what I tried to be about every day. You really need to do that because I believe you want people to want to be there. We spend more time at work than we do at our home in many cases with our loved ones. We're on the road traveling together. People want to feel respected. They want to feel safe when they come in the office. They want to feel empowered to do good things. They want to know that there's a safety net there for them if they make a mistake. It may not be the end of the world. And in most cases, you try not to put people in those situations. But it's a fascinating journey. It really was. And I do appreciate the opportunity now to step back and reflect on that. That's been pretty rewarding over the last 6 months or so.
Yeah. We'll get to the last 6 months in a bit. I have to make one sidestep. Lawnmowers. We have a lot of listeners because we have statistics. We have 80% listeners United States, but we have 20% listeners from Europe and other places. And I think it is sometimes good to teach non-Americans about how deeply ingrained lawn and the quality of lawn is in the American soul.
Yes.
So for a European, a lawnmower is like, it's a lawnmower, it's a thing. For us, lawnmower is, working on one of the most important part of our psyche because lawn really matters. And maybe you can talk the most amazing example. One of the funniest about lawn is, so there's the pharmaceutical manufacturing site, upstate New York from here. And it was a good site. And they had the Novartis CEO come over, Joe Jimenez, and they desperately wanted to hear that they're the best site in the world. And he got in front of the microphone and said, yeah, I think you have some really great lawn out there.
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful. Then the lawn was great. No, but that is so when lawnmowers is an important business in the United States. It's not,
It is.
right? It's a cultural thing.
It is, and I don't know, I won't say specifically that it's different because the land sizes maybe are a little bigger here.
Yeah.
I would say this, it is mowing your lawn, in my case, and in most customers' case, when you talk to them about their passion for this, it's a work of art.
Yes.
It's it's an
Yeah.
expression. It's an expression of
Yes.
it's an expression of your talent. It's no different than if you went to the Ritz-Carlton and you talk to the housekeeping service there and you ask them, what is one of the most rewarding parts about their job? They will tell you, believe it or not, it's seeing the lines in the carpet in the exactness in which they vacuum. They
Yeah.
love that. And
Yeah.
each one of them, in many cases, has a slightly different signature to that. So you find that in not only consumers, but also professional landscape contractors who do this for a living. For me, I was less of a quote unquote gearhead or engine expert or any of those things. I learned a lot in my time there, but it was more about this idea that I was doing something that I like to do. It was a job that I was working to sell lawnmowers, and so an area that again, I really appreciated mowing
Yeah.
my grass.
Yeah. And I think there's this piece where our front yards have the size where a European would like build 10 duplex houses.
Yes.
It is just visually, it's an important part of the house here.
Well, and also for our European counterparts or friends watching this podcast, these mowers are very expensive, right? They say, especially the mowers that we built, their Exmark mowers can go anywhere from $12,000 up to $80,000. So they're not a machine that you
Good
would buy.
lawnmower.
Yes, you would buy. It's a once in a lifetime purchase.
Yeah.
So back to kind of where we initially started,
Yeah.
part of the philosophy was as we looked at the prices of those mowers, we really tried to cultivate this culture of every mower matters. And it sounds
Mm,
a little bit cliche. And I used to say that to people, every mower matters. And they, at first people said, well, what does that mean? I said, well, every person who touches this thing really has to have a sense of pride in what they do every day because there's someone out there who's willing to part with $10,000 or $12,000. It's a very big
it's an
investment.
investment. It is.
And they wanna know that this is the best. They wanna know that the level of detail, that was put into the manufacturing, the engineering, the testing of this machine was absolutely the best it could be. And so it really resonated with our associates, and it created this pride in ownership. And it didn't matter if you were at the end of the line, turning the last crank on a bolt, or you were an engineer, a chief engineer designing these products. It just everybody really loved what they were doing and they believed it mattered. And
Yes.
I think that was really incumbent on me as a leader to philosophically to ensure that everyone realized that no matter what you were doing in the company, it mattered
It
and it
mattered.
impacted the customer. And that, again, philosophically was very,
Beautiful.
very important for me.
So, and you know it's the first time I hear this, but what I love about it, every mower matters. Mower is basically either the machine or the one who sits on the machine because he
That's right.
mows. So
Yes.
it's so that you have the customer in there
Yes.
because I mean, I don't know if it was ever intended to be, but if I mow, I mean, just my English as a second language, but if I mow my lawn, I'm a mower,
Yep.
technically.
That's
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, you
Yeah.
are.
No, that is, and it's just three words.
It
Darren,
was
before this, I think this is very good insight into your journey. Before we get into the transition, and then into further leadership and everything, I feel like we both had we read the same books, especially there's a book called First Break All the Rules. It, see, here we go, because I'm like, I know those, I know. So this is, everybody has a key skill. And just to add to that, since I read the book 20 years ago, I am on a continuous quest to find the key skill that a person has with them, which they cannot learn or they cannot experience. So
yes.
for example, you put a little kid into the water and they can swim beautifully and fast for whatever reason. Never, of course, they learn swimming, but you never trained them. And it's not that they experience, they can just do it. That's a key skill.
Yes.
Because, and then that translates to the Ritz-Carlton example, where in a traditional form of career, we think like the housekeeping we think they should all be, they're probably all willing to progress in their careers. And we put them on the front desk and then on the front desk, they don't perform because they don't enjoy the work. And I think out of this entire key skill thing comes the idea to allow people to do what they enjoy and do best.
Exactly.
Yeah. And not our perceived notion that everybody wants to be, I don't know, the hotel director. Not
That's
everybody
right.
wants to be the hotel director.
Yeah. And there was, and we all make, I think, again, back to my earlier career, these things. My father was a very successful executive. And so I watched how he managed his time and what his philosophy was around leadership. And I always tried to mimic, I always wanted to be like him because I just admired him so much and people loved him so much. But you fall into this trap a little bit. It's those little subtleties that you don't necessarily pick up from your father because you're not in that daily. So there are times in my career where you have a great salesman and all of a sudden we're at an executive meeting, we're like, oh well, let's take Tom or Sue and let's move her to lead sales. Well, you find out 6 months later that your sales are declining, your team
Hmm.
is unmotivated,
Yes.
and you realize that person never wanted to lead sales, they wanted to sell. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
it just really became this, it's kind of was almost a quest of mine to find the right talent or the right place for these
Yeah.
for
So
our.
like meet people and mission. So where person and mission meet. So that sweet spot.
Yes. And
And
so it was really became, and it's constantly calibrating because a business, at least from my perspective and my experience, is a living thing. It's an organism. It constantly changes. The pressures are different daily or monthly. Yearly things change, technology changes. So the needs of the business change. So it became this constant synchronization of, kind of like a dance, if you will, finding people to move them into the new roles we needed or to solve new problems that have just popped up that we weren't thinking about, but we had the talent to do it. It was
yes.
really, we as leaders had to then go back through and reassign constantly and make sure that we're putting people in the right places.
Yeah, yeah, and if you take that, so you mentioned A talent. You can't have A talent everywhere, but if you take the swimmer, the one that has the talent for swimming, and put them on the track, so that they run 100 meters or whatever they do. The thing is, of course, on the track they're a B or even C talent because their talent is the swimming. But if you match people and missions, you have much more A players than in the
That's right.
traditional setup.
Yes.
And this is
And
where I
then
think that, yeah.
it's up to us to inspire them to set a goal and a vision that people can get behind and believe in. So now you're starting to put this amazingly beautiful, talented people in these roles that they feel fulfilled about. And now you've given them a purpose and you've given them a vision around that. And it really, really builds on itself. And that has been some of the most rewarding experiences that I've had in my career.
Amazing. The book that I mentioned that is about the key skills, and I link it in the description below. They have these 12 levels of engagement. So what engages people the most? And we always think like it's have a good performance review and or anything, but they really say the things that engage people the most are, the most is I know I can do what I can do best
Yes,
in my daily job. And secondly, I have the tools to do it.
that's right.
So, and I usually work with the leaders and make sure that number one is meet people and mission. And number two is make sure they have what they need to do. And it's often, but especially those two things, we often fail in organizations
Uh-huh.
to do these
Agree.
things.
Yes, it is amazing. Really, really important as for those younger people who may be watching this. Is taking the time not only to do that for the people around them or the people they lead, but to do it for themselves. And because again, it when you work toward when you know you're going to have a long career or you hope you're going to have a long successful career, life is a rhythm, right? You and I talk about this. The
Yes.
biggest transition for me is, it used to be, I know when to get up. I know when to go to work. I know, I can predict my day, right? And if you're doing that but you're fighting every day to be something that you really don't want to be or you're uncertain about, it can be very exhausting. And so I'd encourage all of the people that are going to be watching this to, take the time. It doesn't matter if you're 58 years old or you're 35 years old, take the time to
Thank
really
you.
think of. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I'm showing my age here, buddy, but it is important to do that self-reflection and figure out, what's going to make you happy. And then I think things really start to fall in place for you professionally.
Yeah, and I think if you work in your sweet spot, that happiness but also fulfillment
Yes,
is much more rewarding than anything you can potentially find. And typically, it's always a question of money. If you're in your sweet spot and you positioned yourself well in your sweet spot, you outperform everyone because this is your superpower.
agree. And when we first met, I want to toot your horn for a second because that's one of the things that I really admired about you initially was I could tell there was an overwhelming joy in what you were doing.
Yes.
You
Thank
were
you.
genuinely intellectually curious. You reached out. You wanted to know about me. You felt like you. So it was really interesting. It was interesting the way you approached it because it was more maybe he knows something that I don't know. I just
Yeah.
wanted to know
Yeah.
him. And we didn't know each other prior. And so I do think it's an important skill, and it helps to expand your mind if you allow it. Intellectual curiosity is an amazing thing.
Yeah. I'm just making my curiosity. And what other time is good time to be curious when you're in your 20s and 30s? Don't
Yes.
close the door in your 20s and 30s.
My goodness, no.
Yeah. No,
And,
this
I know you and I talked about this before, but it doesn't change as you get older. In fact, I think it becomes more this
it
desire
gets
for knowledge.
worse. It
It
gets
does.
worse.
For the things, and I think
Yeah.
back as a student at Florida State, and, I wish I could have it over again because, not only did I have a blast, which that's a whole nother story, but I think that, my joy of learning today is stronger than it's ever been. And I do
Uh,
think that's just a natural part of aging, perhaps, and maturing. But I look back at those times now and think, "Boy, if I had to do over again, it definitely would have been different." I think I would have really taken the time to enjoy my education. Where back then it was more, let's push through the college years and move on and start making some money. So, but that's the way life
yeah,
goes.
and it's a tough exercise to tell a young person to slow down and enjoy it.
Yes.
I think is we have the benefit of looking back at it and assess it in a different way. Before we go to the transition, because you took the conversation a little bit there, you don't strike me as someone who lives in a world of regret. Absolutely not. But when you look at 30 years and the 500 million HP um, college, what things would you do differently? In terms of this is stuff that I regret looking back, and maybe these turned into big learnings, but nevertheless you regretted them.
Yeah, I'll say one thing. Let's start with the opportunity to sell the business. I really appreciate what you said because I don't regret any of that. I don't. I don't believe we were at a place. I was not personally at a place where I felt mature enough to handle that type of wealth that quickly. I don't think it would have been good for my family, for my marriage. I just think there was a lot of money very quickly. We worked really hard, but again, so I look at each one of those opportunities as, hey, that's the way that goes. I certainly have no regrets. I would say one of the things that I learned, unfortunately, I won't say it was a regret, but I learned it was a powerful message. When you're young and you get comfortable doing things, if you're at a certain business for a period of time, information comes at you, you know, pretty quickly all the
Yes,
time, and you
all the
process quick.
time. Yes.
You're constantly processing and you're constantly making decisions and things. I found myself at a younger age being distracted. So I felt like everything was a rush. So associates would come in and want to talk to me about a topic. And right off the bat, I'm 2 minutes into this and I've already got an answer, right? Or I was kept looking at my phone or whatever the case may be. And somebody
What
made a
phone were you looking at when you were younger?
well, I mean, in that
I'm
case,
just
yeah, my
messing with
computer,
you.
well, yeah, whatever,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's like you the
The landline,
landline thing.
yeah, exactly.
I know
But
what
it
you
be
I know what you mean. It's just
but it
funny. People
became
in our age, nobody can believe we grew up without smartphones.
it's crazy,
It's
yeah.
crazy.
I mean, well, now I'm shocked that we got through,
Sorry,
but
I'm sorry I interrupted you. So you were distracted.
no,
Yeah,
no, and so someone made a comment to me one day that really jarred me and said, "I wish you would just focus on what I'm trying to tell you." That was a when you talk about a regret, that was a major learning experience for me. So,
yeah,
from that day
yeah.
forward, my philosophy changed, and my philosophy was to throw myself in every conversation that I was in, and
Mm,
that can be exhausting, but it is essential. It was essential for me
yeah,
as an authentic leader to care that someone was taking the time to come and talk to me. And I had to treat whether someone, and I kid you not, this is not an extreme example. Someone could come in and complain to me about the way the paper towel dispenser was mounted to the wall in the men's restroom. And I had to listen to that, absorb what they were saying, and try and give them a thoughtful response. And I really felt like that was important. Not only was it indicative of what I believed was important, which is our associates, but I think it was a good example for them to say, we have to treat each other with respect, and respect starts with accepting what when and being present when someone needs something. And so back to the whole, be kind. That was one of the
yeah.
speeches I made at our in front of the company when I was leaving my last day. Got to address the team, and I just said, again, it's easy to be a jerk. It's hard to be kind, but that's the most important thing about a culture like we had is you have to treat people respectfully. So throwing yourself at those conversations. So that was a big learning moment for me. Really big.
Yeah, that's a good and you have to have a lot of energy to treat everyone who walks through the door like it is 8 a.m. in the morning and you're full of energy.
Yes,
Like we work with customers. If the customer calls in at 5 minutes before my shift ends, I have to treat the customer as much as in the beginning of the day as I would treat in the best possible way every other customer.
that's correct. Yeah, it is. It's not easy to execute, but again, and I think for
No.
me, and these are very personal answers. So everyone, we're all so different, but I think authenticity is really vital. And part of that authenticity comes across when you throw yourself into people's lives or into conversations. And it's I used to also tell the team, I said, it's interesting, as much as we all know about each other, there's every day that every one of our associates comes through that door, they're dragging something with them that we don't know about. It's a money problem, it's a marriage
Yeah.
problem,
Absolute.
it's a child problem, it's a family issue, and it's not necessarily our responsibility to try and get to the bottom of that and to help them, but it is our responsibility to accept that some days are not going to be great days. What we need to do is we need to get the best out of people 100%. If we can get 100% of 60% some days, then that's okay. But it's this back to philosophies. It's really just this acceptance and understanding. Now, don't accept mediocrity. Don't accept poor performance or poor behavior, but acknowledge that we're all so different, and we all have our challenges, including you and me and all of us. And so how do you just understanding that and acknowledging that, I think, is important, part of leading.
And I think, especially for less seasoned leaders, because you're basically hired. Your role is to make sure there's no mediocrity or there's no poor performance. And of course, the natural go-to is you got to be tough. You got to be have clear messaging and everything. And quite often, when we don't have the experience, these conversations don't turn out to be kind conversations.
That's right. That's right.
And I think this is keeping that balance of keeping You're talking to a human being. It's the respect that it requires. It's still a development conversation, even when it's about performance. And to do all of that at the same time while making sure that the performance goes up, that's a big challenge.
It is, and I believe that there's strength in that, though. I think that where a lot of maybe traditionally 5, 40 years ago, it would be seen as weakness, I don't
Yeah.
see that at all. I think understanding people, getting to trying to really connect with a person, to try and really understand what makes them go, to acknowledge that not every day is going to be a great day, but to hold your standards high, to make sure that they know what your expectations are, that there's really clear goals for the business, there's well defined goals for each one of them, that we hold each other accountable to achieve those things. You can do all those things, and you can be a I felt I was a very, very strong leader. And I also knew when it was time to go, right? That's the other gift I think sometimes that young people maybe don't get learn that quick enough. But there's listen, we're having fun at work, we're laughing, we're belly laughing, and then there's 30 seconds later we're off and running again.
Yes.
So there is you got to be able to make those you have to be able to pivot in the moment, if you will, and it really makes a difference.
Yeah. And business is a serious matter. But if you take everything seriously during the day, you're burning fuel. You got to recharge during the day.
Exactly.
The transition is next there. But I have a fun example. I'm sorry. This is kind of an episode where I give examples also, it's because we have this conversational attitude, you and I. Um, I was a young professional. My coworker's friend was one of the industrial giants in Germany. His dad was on boards like Mercedes-Benz, Siemens, like someone very, very well known. And he was the CEO of one of those companies. Um, and I was intimidated to some extent, and I said, "What is the?" And then when I met him, he had stepped out and he was basically consulting. And I asked him, I don't know what the question was, but I kind of in a way like, what is the first thing that you do when you visit a company? When you want to understand how a company is run. And he says, Dirk, when I say hi in the lobby, I get registered at the desk. And then the first thing I do is I go to the guest bathroom. And this, you brought me to this example, and he said someone walks in and there's like a paper towel missing somewhere. And then he said, and I'm like, why would you go to the guest bathroom? He says, if the guest bathroom in the lobby tells you everything about the culture of the company.
Interesting.
If it's dirty or not cleaned or anything, leadership will be in disarray because the leaders on top, they don't care about the details. There's no consistent mindset to treat not just people, but everything with respect.
Yes.
And I've made this my life's mission. I hope nobody quotes me for this. Every time I go into a new company, it happens quite often for me. Even if I don't have to go, to go wash my hands, I go to the guest bathroom because
Interesting.
it gives me an indication of what the place is about. And the crazy thing is, it's always true.
I have never heard that, Dirk, but you are 100% correct. And I'll be honest with you, and I won't get into the stories, but I harped on that when I was at Exmark. We had a brand new building, and it got to the point where I said, if these bathrooms are not treated the way I expect them to be treated, if we're not doing the right things, we will lose our privileges to use these restrooms. But it was important to me. And I didn't know what that is, but I used to think I wouldn't want someone to come into my home and feel that way. I certainly don't want them to come into the office and feel that way. It's not a good look for the business. So that's fascinating. But it's another example of these little details, these breadcrumbs, if you will. They all tell a story about
Oh,
who and what
and
company is and the culture and the people. It is fascinating. You think those things don't matter, but they really do.
yeah, and all companies that perform great, the performance is consistent across all aspects.
Yes.
It's not just like the product is shiny, but the bathroom is a mess or anything, or they treat their people bad. It all falls into line. They have a work culture. They treat customers in a certain way. They treat their product development in a certain way. It's a holistic story, basically.
Agree. Agree. No, it's great.
Yeah. Oh, we so much agree, and I got to do less talking here because we want to know everything about
No,
you,
this is
Darren.
it is absolutely fascinating. I love it, Dirk. So thank you.
Let me pivot. I Last week I had the immense pleasure to talk to someone I would consider a mentor, as one of the probably best coaches you can have in the United States. His name is Mike Horn, so my last name, but with an E at the end, Mike Horn. I got to know him at Genentech. Dr. Mike Horn, I even have to say, he's one of the leading guys when it comes to transition. And we talked about this. So he described transition as the space between letting go and beginning something new.
Yes.
So when you think about that space, and I think that's right where you're maybe probably even still in. So what have you learned since, I think you said April, about that the mindset to navigate the space, well, that in between space?
Yeah, it's been wow. That's a really interesting question and full of probably a lot of anecdotes. But I'll say this: it was been a little bit scary, quite candidly.
Yeah.
You're letting go of the thing you knew. You're letting go of the thing that gave you your identity and your purpose every day. And so you do, and I'm going through a little bit of this transition myself, as you said, where it's now finding the next thing that will bring I want something to bring me joy, right? I want to do something that I can be passionate about, but that I believe in. And so the what this opportunity has afforded me has been the now I get to pick, right? I was very fortunate with my 20-year career at the Toro Company because it was a job that I absolutely loved. I wouldn't have traded it for the world. It was really what I wanted to do. And it spoiled me a little bit because now, even though I would prefer not to go back to work full time, I want to find something to do that brings me joy and purpose. And that was a high benchmark for me because that was such a great experience. Now I have to replicate that. But it has been I'm on this definitely learning more about myself, learning more about not controlling every moment of every day, learning to be more accessible to my family, my wife in particular. Those are things that are important. And it's fascinating too because as you shift out of a role, a significant position where, um, you know, you're consumed most of the time, right? You're consumed from the time you get up until the time you go to bed, and even sometimes in the hours at night when you wake up. When you leave that, it's amazing how people start to reach out to you that maybe didn't talk to you before because you were quote unquote too busy.
Too busy, yeah.
They knew that they may not get 100% of your time because you were so consumed by the job. And so I'm finding, interestingly enough, my days go pretty quickly because I'm finding myself now involved in lots of things that I would have never been involved with before, talking to people who needed support that I could have never supported before.
Mhm.
The core of one of those examples is my parents who live in Orlando, which is a couple hours from here. We're a very, very close family, but I was not present for them, right? I mean, I was running a big company and I was living in Lincoln, Nebraska and traveling around North America and they were aging and living in Florida. I wasn't able to be there for some of those important moments in their lives. So it is kind of this whole transition of trying to find the next thing. You evolve. I find myself evolving even as a person in in ways that I had not expected.
Yeah. First of all, I just think it's good news that the day's filling pretty
Yeah,
quickly,
yeah,
because others, and it's a serious matter, others find themselves in a position where they're like, the work's gone, the company's gone, the team's gone. Who am I?
yeah, exactly. I
Yeah,
worried
because
about that.
yeah,
I did worry about that. And I give a lot of credit, quite frankly, to my wife, who's been such a big supporter of mine throughout my career, but also given me this kind of a sense of courage and a sense of confidence that hey, that was you did that, you did well at that, but there'll be a million other things you can do that and you can be good at it and find joy and find passion in. So I think it's really been a team effort here in our household. So I'm grateful for that. I don't have the answers though, truly, truth be told. I think it's very much a new journey for me. And so how it ends or where it goes from here, I don't know. I will tell you, I'm very at peace. The thing I miss the most are the relationships. I miss the team dearly because those were very genuine relationships and we went through a lot together. So those are things that are hard to replicate in retirement, but they're never far away, right? You're a phone call away. So
Yeah, and listening to you, Darren, I would like to think you are retired from the Toro Company, but retirement is a weird concept in itself. What does that
agree,
actually mean? I
agree.
don't think you, I mean, by the way, your LinkedIn says Toro, and then in brackets, retired. It's like you wanted to make a statement, but in fact, you don't. I don't know what retirement looks like, but it doesn't look like you. Basically, doesn't
Yeah,
feel it. That I don't
it's
know.
different. It's
It's
very different. There's days I enjoy the solitude of, you and I joked around and either getting on my
yeah,
bike and go ride for a couple hours or going and
yeah.
grabbing my fishing pole and doing those things. But still am very intellectually curious. Nothing's really changed. It's just the way I spend
Yes.
my time during the day. It's just different. And I feel like I'm poised. I feel like I'm on a path to find something very significant. I really do.
Yes. Yes.
It's going to be a different type of significance, right? I'm not talking about necessarily going back and into a big position like that,
No, you've had this.
but there's something out there, and it's kind of that quest alone, that journey alone, is kind of exciting. I'll say this: I told my wife when we were going before we did this, I said, our life has been easy in a sense because everything we knew, things we knew, we had insurance, we knew we got paid every 2 weeks. We knew where the kids were. We knew when we were supposed to go someplace, and everything. This is different
You followed
because
a template, basically.
we are in a little boat that got pushed out in the
Yeah.
ocean,
Yeah.
and now we have no idea where we're going. And there's something kind of cathartic about that, right? It's kind of therapeutic. We're on a journey then, and we haven't had to do this in a long time. It's an adventure.
Yes, let me go, and this has a connection to what we just discussed. 2 steps back, Darren. We talked about everyone has a unique skill. What's your unique skill? I didn't ask this half an hour. What's your unique skill?
I think the things that bring me the most passion, the things that bring me joy is I'm a very passionate person. I love strategy. I love complexity and I love people. I think those if you can look at things differently and always challenge yourself to look at things differently, the whole idea of blinders and things like that. If you listen to I used to really enjoy listening to futurists and more business centric futurists who
Mhm.
would talk about examples of the past and how we've buried our head in the sand and we missed this opportunity, that opportunity. I always found that very fascinating because they were such simple examples, but they had such profound impact on industry. And
Yes,
so, I like that. I like to be curious. I like to think differently. I like to be creative. I love to research. I think those are things that are really powerful. Knowledge is important, and not. And the other thing I think young people make mistakes and think it's you need to be the keeper of knowledge. No, you need to be the sharer of knowledge. Share of knowledge is more. That's where you get your multiples. So that's more empowering than anything. To have one person with knowledge locked up, it doesn't really do much for you. So I love that thing. I love to teach. I love to learn, I love to teach, but I love creativity. Just thinking about a business in different ways and what you can do with the resources, the assets, the people in the context of a strategy can be a very powerful thing when you put those things together.
I agree 100%. And just share of knowledge, I agree with you. So here's what I tell people. From when you're being a student, high school, university, the moment you explained the stuff to someone else, you shared knowledge, that's when you truly learned.
Yes,
When you learn for yourself, but when you teach it, the teaching in itself has such a profound effect on our learning ourselves, right?
that's
So and
right.
then they're all like, yeah, I remember the stuff that I was able to explain to my fellow students. That's the stuff I was really good at. And see, this is where the sharing of knowledge comes in. It's not the keeping of knowledge, the sharing of knowledge is what expands you, which is kind of weird when you think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's more selfless and it feels better. It just feels good, right? I mean, to
See,
be
but
able to, and like you said, and it's a way to hone your own skills as well.
and
The
in
more you
this
talk
way,
about things and it
therefore, I'm sorry to say, I don't think it's selfless teaching. I enjoy to teach, but I'd have to say there's nothing selfless about it because I
Yeah,
enjoy the teaching piece.
that's fair. That's a great way to look at it too. Yeah.
Superpower, and I asked this for a reason. I think the superpower is, first of all, the things we can do good, but this is where we recharge. This is where we get energy from. You said strategy, complexity, people, and there's this driven by curiosity, creativity. You will naturally find spaces where you can use your superpower because your superpower is also your battery. This is where the energy comes from. Um, if y I can imagine fishing can be a nice distraction, but you won't become a full-time fisherman
No.
because it's what's lacking, and maybe you need to have a little bit of strategy when it comes to fishing. I have no idea how fishing works, but choose the spot.
You yeah, you do.
Yeah, there's a little bit of strategy.
I'm getting better, Dirk. I'm getting
Yeah,
better.
because you're approaching it with your
Yeah,
superpower.
I am. I am. I know where to go, what time to go there, and how to do it now.
Yeah, abs and when you say you're in the path to finding something very significant, it's probably your curiosity that'll get you there.
Yeah. I've always believed though too, and I was one of those odd people that always woke up and believed that something great was gonna happen today, you know? And so I kind of feel like that now, right? Just feel like something amazing is gonna happen. And I don't know what it is. I'm gonna do the best I can to keep searching, but I just am optimistic for the future. I just think there's some amazing thing. And this has been, like I said, probably the greatest. It's been such a great decision, not without its challenges. And again, you're walking away from something significant, but you're walking into something significant. And like you said, retirement really, it's such a odd word because you're not quitting, you're not leaving, you're just refocusing. And so it's been a ton of fun,
Yeah,
but it's
so
a lot. It's different, very, very different.
I think almost, Darren, you owe it to the leadership population is one thing, because you fall into the Jeffrey Pfeffer trap. It's like you had your life as an executive and now you were unplugging. And I
Yes.
think the message, which is there's no judgment here, but I think the big question that I have, if we want to create some value, how can unplugging play a role during your active time as a leader? So, because the one regret you had was you weren't accessible as much as you wanted to family, reconnecting, especially also with the wife, everything. So, how can we put the unplug piece into leaders' life, not after they're done, but while they're doing it?
Great question. I think now as I sit back and think about that question, the way I'll answer it now is probably a lot different than what I would have answered 6 months or 12 months ago. Think you one of the maybe perhaps one of the things I could have done better is been a little more conscientious of the need to recharge and how to do that. I believe I probably no different than a lot of executives and former executives. You fall into a bit of a trap where it becomes all consuming. And that's a powerful thing unto itself. It means you're passionate, you love what you do, and you're probably making a difference. And I think those are really great things. But to your point, there's this you get to a point of diminishing returns if it becomes all you do and all you know. And so in hindsight, I wish I would have taken more time away. I wish I would have stepped back. Dirk, I don't know if you know this, we never took in our whole lives as a family, I've never took 2-week vacation. It was unheard of. It was impossible for me to leave anything for 2 weeks. And that's a small example, but I look at that now and say, could I have elevated my game even more if I would have listened to my wife and stepped back for 2 weeks? Could I
Yeah.
elevated my game more if would I've been fresher or more impactful if I had taken the time to step back at times when I know I needed to, but I just forged ahead. And again, it's a little bit of a conundrum because your natural instinct is certainly for me is a driver. I'm gonna drive, 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 right? I'm gonna go. I want to succeed. I want people around me to succeed. I want to lift everybody up. I want to be great. And part of that, it cuts both ways because in this quest for greatness, it becomes a drive it's hard to keep going 24 hours a day. And so to the question, I think stepping back taking the time to recharge, whatever that may be, finding those moments more consistently, I think would have probably been more beneficial for me throughout my career.
You and me both, we have the advantage of hindsight. In hindsight, I should have done this. What would have been the pitch that could have convinced 10 years younger Darren to do a 2-week vacation?
I think if I would have probably, as the words were rolling out of my mouth there a couple seconds ago, I was thinking if I would have known that the payoff was could have been greater. If I would have known that 2 weeks away would have made me even more impactful. 2
Hmm.
weeks away would have made me even more creative. 2 weeks away would have made me more insightful. I didn't realize I was too fearful to step away for 2 weeks. I'm being quite candid now. I didn't understand that. Couldn't get my mind around that. I was walking away from too much. There was too many things happening that I felt like 2 weeks away was just it was gonna be really difficult for me. But if the pitch would have been, "Hey, I can tell you without any doubt, you're gonna be even more impactful, you're gonna feel better, you're going to think clearer, take this time," I probably would have done it.
You see, and we're going really deep here into the psyche of leaders. But if we tell somebody, if you take 2 weeks off, you'd be more impactful, more creative, more insightful. We almost turn the vacation into a project with KPIs at the end of the project. But I
Yeah.
think the result only comes when you actually let go first. But if we, and I'm looking for that pitch because I think that is an important pitch for today's leaders. Um,
I'll take that as a challenge because
yes,
I think it I really wanna think about that because I know we can come up with something a lot more powerful and that's very succinct that could help other leaders understand the importance of recharging, whatever recharging means. And it's almost this idea of, again, selfish or selflessness, however you want to say it. I think sometimes we need to be a little more selfish. I think we need to, it, we take such pride in being many leaders, successful leaders try and be selfless and they want nothing but the best for the company and the people around them. But again, that comes at a cost. Sometimes you have to really put yourself first. So I wish I would have balanced a little bit better.
yeah, and because I do think there are some 2 weeks vacations where you don't return more impactful, more creative, more insightful. It's not just a 2-week vacation. I think it's an overall mindset of being able to to create those spaces where you can let go. So I think the 2-week vacation is just a symptom. It's not the,
I agree. It's just an arbitrary time frame you put out
yeah.
there. You can make it a 1 week vacation, whatever the case may be. I just think in the end, I never really let myself get to that point. And again, you the coulda, woulda, shouldas. I really try not to harbor much regret on those things, but it was a learning experience, right? So that back to the original question is just that transition. You learn a lot. You think a lot about those types of things that you probably would have never thought of before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the art, and maybe we need to discuss this further, Darren, and next podcast or whenever. How can we get this learning that you have now? And frankly, I had it too. I stepped out when I was 43 and became a consultant. I had this life of being there for yeah, by the way, I did a lot less money, which is fine. Money is only one thing, but I was close to the family. I drove my kids every morning to kindergarten, and I'm proud of this.
That's very cool.
And all these things. So I did this on purpose back in the day, but you pay a price for it.
Yes, you
When you
do.
do it, and it's not that my bank account is overflowing. I could basically retire whenever I wanted. No, I need to work and I need to continue to work. So I did this at a point where I took the risk of having not a corporate salary and not the corporate career, but living the life that I wanted. And I think that, you know, that require maybe it's stupidity on my end, but it requires a lot of courage.
Yes,
And
it does.
yeah,
What you did at that age and to transition out, especially because your children at their age, that's a takes a lot of courage to do
As
that.
I
That's
said,
a
maybe
that's a
stupidity,
massive.
but maybe a combination of both.
Well, I think it's indicative. Again, this is where I think we share so much in common.
Yeah,
It's indicative of your courage and your confidence to say, "Listen, I'm willing to do this, and I know I can do it, and I'll find a way for it to be successful. I will success into my life no matter what." And I think that's a pretty powerful mindset. So it's interesting though. You a lot of people don't ever take those chances, and it's hard. It's hard
it's
to do that.
hard. Maybe you don't necessarily like I did, or you did, by the way. We both stepped out to have that kind of freedom. Maybe there is a way, and I think this is what not just leaders, corporate employees, they all want to, nobody goes to work in the morning to be a bad person or perform bad. Everybody wants to do good. I truly believe this.
I love that too.
Yeah.
I used to say that. I said, "Nobody comes into work and say, 'I really
To
wanna
screw
suck
up.
today. I
Nobody.
really wanna really wanna take this company down today.'"
Yeah, no, but we just have built a system that doesn't allow people to flourish in the way that they could. I think, I know it's getting philosophical. Maybe we need to start with leaders, but if leaders learn to be more of themselves in that rigid framework of corporate rules, I think we would create tremendous amounts of value.
Yeah, I
Because the
agree.
energy source when someone is convinced and does what they love and feel fulfilled, that's nuclear energy. It's constant.
No doubt. You know, and the other thing you said, and it's a whole 'nother topic that we don't have to go down this rabbit hole now, but
I'd love
money
to.
is
Let
an
me see.
money is an interesting driver to all of us, right? We all need money to
It
survive it.
is.
But one of the things I've realized, and certainly we personally, you could always say we could have done more. You look back, "No, wish I would have done this or could have done that." But in the end, no matter how much money you have, you're going to spend it. I think that you have to find a balance in your life. We chose to downsize our lives, right? We moved from a really big house into a smaller house. We moved from Nebraska to Florida. Our lives are different now,
Yeah.
but that was by design. We wanted to do that, and what it made me realize is it really, you always we're human, and by nature, you're always going to think about and worry about certain things. And money is one of those things that we all have to, you have to be thinking about. You have to be conscious of it. So I'm no different than anybody else. But I would tell you that I'd never really, I don't stay up at night thinking about necessarily, the need to make X amount more money. I think it's about, now it's more about how do we preserve what we've worked so hard for and how do we enjoy our lives. And so I think for younger people again who hear this message, I would ask you to think very clearly and consciously about what drives you, because money can be a driver, but it can't be the driver. I would never have found happiness in that.
No, no, I agree. Let this stand exactly what it is. Perfect. Darren, last question, because we could continue doing this, but here's the last question. Going forward, and speaks to your superpower, your desire to research, what are you most curious about? What's your next rabbit hole?
Probably the thing that is most interesting to me right now is artificial intelligence. And the pervasive impact it's happening on every aspect of people's lives. And I don't
Yes.
think we realize, and it's easy to say, and again, there's many smarter people who are going to watch this podcast than I will ever be. So I acknowledge right up front that I'm not a historian of innovation per se. I'd like to say I know enough. I'm curious enough. Obviously, it's something that I'm passionate about. So I do like innovation. And I think about moments in time and history, certainly here in the United States and even globally, about what were the big things that were transformational. And the internet was certainly arguably a massive transformation. Maybe you could say the biggest. I would contend, I'm not sure, but artificial intelligence feels like this could be even bigger than the cell phone. And again, it depends on who you talk to. I just think this will impact so many aspects of our lives. I am also not a fearful artificial
No.
intelligence. I don't I'm not going to lay awake at night worrying about whether this is going to take everybody's jobs, because I think we are a very resilient society and I think we will find ways to reinvent ourselves and do things. I just find it fascinating the amount of information that is now available, relevant, and how it can impact a strategy in a business. I just think there's so many powerful things that are going to happen in the next, probably 5 years that are we're going to look back and scratch our heads and say, I never saw that coming, or that is really big. And I think artificial intelligence is one of those things.
And interesting you say that. I want to share. So there's another podcast guest, Michael Antonovich. He's a VP of innovation in the nutritional industry, and in the brief he gave me something to think of, and I wasn't able to crack that in 2 weeks until we finally got on the podcast. He said that the information that surrounds us is like it's like the entire ocean is around us, because information is it is and it is overwhelming, it's intimidating, and it's frightening. And he said, now if we're confronted with an ocean, and he said, why don't we build a relationship with water? And I took this and I'm like, okay, that is interesting. I have to think about this. So because everything out there in terms of using AI, for example, it's intimidating. And I think relationship with water means, if you want, use ChatGPT or Grok or whatever you're in, and understand that all the information is there, and start accepting that the information is there, that we can use the information, and that we don't need to understand the entire ocean. It's parts of the oceans that we use for us, for the purpose that we're looking for. But that, because the intimidating piece is, I don't understand. It's too much. It's overwhelming. But I think the overwhelming piece only goes away when you start using it and leverage, I don't know, do what you like, create purpose, do research, anything. I think that creating the relationship with AI is one of the key elements for the future, and understand what it can do for.
That's very well stated, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's like most things, you can't run in fear of innovation. It's we can't stop this, and so we can accept it. And I think there's very creative and thoughtful ways to use artificial intelligence. For me, what it's done is it's stoked my curiosity of all the cool things we can do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You think about, there's a million things in your daily life. And I went out last week, you and I discussed this. I was doing a small consulting assignment with a group out of Des Moines, Iowa. And as I prepared to go out there, just the magnitude of things that they could do with this technology in the industry that they're in, I just think could be very, very transformational and really exciting, really rewarding. And it is a redeployment of resources. It's again, back to where we started. You've got this talent pool. Now what's fun is we've got augmenting some of that work with some of this artificial intelligence, but now we can redeploy those resources in unique ways to even further expand and grow the company. And it's just it's a fun topic. It really is.
Yeah, and you mentioned the internet. The internet first destroyed many jobs, and then it became the biggest job machine that we've ever seen.
There you go. Yeah. I think artificial intelligence may be this.
And yes, absolutely. So from helping build Exmark from the ground up to leading its growth for acquisition and into the larger Toro organization, Daryn Walters has shaped a career defined by operational excellence, disciplined execution, and a deep respect for the people who make great manufacturing possible. Now, as he stepped down from day-to-day leadership and into what many would call retirement, Daryn is exploring a different kind of challenge. And we've talked about this: redefining purpose, contribution, still his curiosity and identity beyond the career he built so successfully. Darren's transition shows that stepping back can open a space for reflection, reinvention, and a new sense of what comes next. And if we do it right, has the potential to help the next generation learn from Darren's experiences. Darren, thank you so much for the amazing conversation. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Dirk. It's an honor to be here with you and really enjoy your insights. So thank you. It's a ton of fun.
Ton of fun.